I was thinking today that on the heels of Hassan Minhaj being canceled and other things, that we actually probably deserve Donald Trump as a nation, because I don't think we're better than that. And I love the aspiration of what Eva Longoria Boston said, but I don't believe it. We wouldn't have had Trump even as a candidate, a viable candidate, if we weren't this country. What do you say to that?
I think there's some truth to it. First of all, the press take a lot of responsibility. They loved having him on their shows. The cable show ratings went through the roof. Nobody was willing to go into his background of all of the issues that he had, and they let him skate because they didn't think he would. He was good for ratings. But the sad part, and that's why I loved what Michelle Obama said last night, you got to remember that 92 million people did not vote in 2016. They stayed home. And they woke up the next day, and we lost 3 states by 70,000 votes. It did because people stayed home. They didn't care. Don't tell me elections don't matter. I mean, voting rights is something. When I was chair of the DNC, I started the Voting Rights Institute. I put Donna Brazile in charge of that with Mignon Moore and others. People have fought and died for the right to vote in this country. And the idea that we as Americans aren't even going to exercise that right. Now, I get it. Republicans make it hard, but we got to work harder.
What do you say to people who say Democrats have been out of touch? Like, I've felt that. I think this DNC headed up by Tom Perez is completely out of touch. I think it's tone deaf. I think it's not really seeing and the messaging. I predicted Trump was going to win because I talk every day to people. It seems like there's a elite, and I hate using that word, but there's a group of cronies that get in a room and they make a determination about what to do, and they're not in them streets, and so you get surprised. How did AOC win against an institutional politician? How did Jamal Bowman win in New York? How is this happening? Corey, I can't remember, from Missouri. How did she win? Rashida Tlaib, how did she win? How did so Cori Bush. You guys you don't have your finger on the pulse. You sit in your back rooms and you make these decisions, but that's not America anymore. You can't do what you did with Clinton. You can't do what you did with Obama. This is a different country.
Some politicians like to sit back. I don't think I would ever be in that category. I raised holy hell as governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I had a racist state. I restored more felon rights than any governor in the history of the United States of America. They sued me twice, sued me for contempt of court. I reformed criminal justice in Virginia. I took the Confederate flag off our license plate. Listen, I leaned in. I just wrote a book last year, and John Lewis wrote the foreword for me, called, Beyond Charlottesville, Fighting White Nationalism in America. And my point is, there's racism in this country. We've got it in schools, housing, healthcare. We clearly, Karen, have it in criminal justice. I mean, I pardoned a young guy by the name of Lenny Singleton, Karen. Listen to this. He committed a series of robberies. He was a drug addict. The most he stole was $511, and nobody was ever injured. What do you think his sentence was in Virginia for $511? Take a guess.
Considering that Crystal Mason faced 5 years for accidentally voting in Texas, 10 years?
Close. True, you can Google it. 2 life sentences plus 130 years for $511. Now, I pardoned him. I was happy to do it. My point in all of this is too many politicians talk, and they don't. The end of my book is enough's enough. We need politicians who are going to take action. And, I happen to come from that category. I love to fight. I was in fights every single day. I loved it. Why have power if you're not going to use it? Well, you're right. A lot of people, they put their finger up in the air. I don't ever do that. At the end of the day, fight. You're in office, get things done. I don't need a focus group to tell me what I think is right. I do what I think is right, and I fight like hell.
Yes. When Smiz brought your name up to run for office, I agreed with him. And we have our video producer, Lindsay, went to school with your kids. She gave you the thumbs up as well. She said he was one of the best parents in our school. She loves you. And you have been that guy, that stand-up guy. The felon, the re-establishment of their voting rights, I was talking about that because it was groundbreaking. The flag, the Confederate flag, it was groundbreaking. Your Charlottesville speech, on the heels of Heather Heyer losing her life, being murdered by those cretins, and what you said about America juxtaposed to what Trump was saying. We held that up. because that was important. So how do we end up with Biden? All right, I'm just going to just put it out there. I have to say it.
Yeah.
How? Why
How
not
what?
you? How do we end up with a Joe Biden and not a Terry McAuliffe?
Well, I wanted to run. Listen, Joe Biden had tremendous strength in the African American community. You know that. I think being Barack Obama's vice president. I had to somehow maneuver South Carolina.
I'm sorry. Let me pause you.
Okay.
Let me pause you. He was a +1. He doesn't, and what Clyburn did in South Carolina was self-preservation. And Joe is nice. People like him, but as a strong candidate, come on, like this. Really, we
had a big field. So, listen, we had some issues here in Virginia. If you remember, with our elected officials, I had to come back and run those. I took over the elections here. I may run for governor again. Listen, I love being governor because you get stuff done. No offense, you couldn't pay me to be in Congress. I'm not into sitting around talking all day. I like action. As governor, I got executive authority, and boy, I love to lean in. I redid all my schools, criminal justice, reduced criminal juvenile detention facilities by 2/3. That's what I like doing, and we just have too many politicians who are worried about re-election, and sometimes they will not step out because, oh, my God, what if I do it? I love to just throw it out there. It is what it is. If I didn't win, guess what? My life's not going to change the next day. If I would go up with my head held high, shake it up.
Terry, I want to talk about Joe Biden just as a candidate.
Sure.
We're going to talk about substance quite a bit, but just as a candidate, right? You talked earlier about personality and how media gravitates toward personality, how Trump got all of this media attention because of his personality. When it comes to Biden, he typically gets media attention because of his gas. Every time he does an interview, I hold my breath because I don't want him to shoot himself in the foot and lose an election that could be his. How can the DNC help to make him more attractive to voters who might not be excited to get out and go vote for him? And we have, if not 92 million people staying at home, we don't put a dent in that number. What do we do to get people energized and keep Biden from messing up something that should already be in the bag for him?
Yeah. And we don't know, in fairness, what's going to happen in the fall. We just don't know with COVID if we're going to be out doing our traditional campaign, and we just don't know that today. But to me, it comes down to what is it you stand for, and you will motivate folks by leaning in on big, bold issues. Once he got the nomination, he agreed with Senator Warren on her bankruptcy bill. He did the education piece. Those under $125,000 get free education. He's got to lean in on the big, big, bold issues. As bad as COVID is, I view this as a great opportunity because, and I had to do this when I took over a huge deficit in Virginia, we got to rebuild the American economy. It has not worked for millions and millions of people. People at the top have done great, but no one else has felt like their personal financial situation has improved. It's gotten worse. We have a time now to rebuild an economy that's all-inclusive. Why does somebody make $168 billion? Really? That's outrageous. Nobody needs to make that kind of money. And yet you find out these companies don't even pay taxes. So Joe needs to lean in on building an economy that works for everyone, giving people quality of life, quality education, being able to get in their car and not having to spend 2 hours to go see your kids play a ball game. It's those quality of life issues. That's what I tried to do as governor, lean in big on those goals. And that's what Joe Biden has to do. I think Kamala Harris was exciting, dynamic. She's strong, tough. She will take it to Mike Pence in that debate. She's not going to take any guff from Donald Trump. And we got to fight. And, as you can tell, I like to fight. I grew up as a boxer as a kid up in Syracuse, New York. You get in that damn arena and you fight away. I never do anything behind people's back. If I'm coming at you, I go right at you. Never behind, come in front.
Yeah. Earlier this week, though, you've been fighting for Biden on this economy piece. You said that the business community should be happy that he's coming in, and you talked about how important that economic vision is. What's the case for Biden on that business front? Why should the business community be happy about Biden versus another Trump election?
Yeah, he's got it, in my personal opinion. And listen, the day one, he's got to go in and end the Trump tax cut day one. This tax cut did nothing but help the wealthiest in our country. It went for stock buybacks. Really? It did nothing. They totally snookered the American public. Oh, this will be good for you. He needs to go in and get rid of that. We've got to raise the corporate tax. I mean, we've got to deal with these big, bold issues and have a more fair tax code. Everybody needs health care in this country. The 20 million who did not get covered with Obamacare, that ought to be a top priority. We need new infrastructure in this country. He ought to do that right off the bat. We need to get back in the Paris Climate Agreement. Day one, we should do that. We ought to look at a carbon tax for our environment. I mean, there are some really good, exciting things we can do in those first 100 days. And listen, I know he wants to go in and, like everybody, don't think for 1 second that the Republicans are going to work with us. I hate that they're not. Mitch McConnell is going to want to get the Senate back in 2022. We got 2 years to get our agenda done. Let's use those 2 years. Day one, take no prisoners. Let's get in the game and do, because people are counting on us finally to fight for them. And I do think, I've known Joe forever. He is a good fighter, and he will do this. He's a good
man. And he's a good man. I just think energy-wise, I don't know how much he has in the tank, but that's neither here nor there. If he's on an oxygen tank, I'm voting for him. Terry McAuliffe is here. Governor McAuliffe, I want to answer the brother's question from the Bronx about voting. And is this a state-to-state issue? Trump is messing around with the post office. There are states that have voted by mail forever, for 20 years, with no problem. We get our Social Security check. We mail our taxes in. We get our refunds through the mail. Why is this now an issue? We know why it's an issue. What can we, the people, do to make sure that our voting rights are secure? And if this guy, and it's a two-part question, I was watching CBS this morning, CBS Sunday morning, and they had a chilling piece Ted Koppel did on the powers of the president. There are powers that Trump has that no president has ever used, because the framers never imagined that we'd have a president that could give a damn about this democracy or this republic. The framers of this Constitution never imagined that we would have somebody that would work with a foreign operative to undermine our democracy. They never imagined that. But he has the power to do it. He has the power to stop the election through executive order, call an emergency. He can do just about anything with a stroke of a pen. And he has the power to do it. We, the people, what do we have the power to do to stop him?
So let's be clear. Right now, if you look at where we are in the election, today there are really 6 battleground states: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona. We got Florida in the mix, North Carolina. So those 6 states, today we're leading in those 6 states. Election's not today, but I feel good about where we are. There's only one thing Donald Trump can do, and this is what he plans on doing. He wants all of his people, at least in those 6 states, to vote in person, and hoping that the Democrats all vote by mail, and there's 100 million ballots cast. It was 24.5% in 16. It'll be close to 70% this year. On election night, because everybody has voted in person on his side, he's going to declare victory. He's going to come out and say, oh, all those 100 million ballots, they were sent in by Russia and China and North Korea and Syria and everywhere else, and they're fraudulent. That's what he's going to try and do. So, to answer the questioner who came in, he's right. It's determined by the states. Every state determines how absentee balloting works, when you can vote early. We in Virginia, we just won both chambers last year, so we now have the governorship. We have the trifecta. So we just changed our voting laws. No excuse absentee voting, and most importantly, 45-day early vote. So beginning September 18th in Virginia, you can go in person and vote. And I am imploring everybody, if you don't have to do it by mail, you've got 45 days to vote. You can do it there. And that's what we really need to be doing. But Trump, there's nothing he can do with the federal election. He can't postpone it. And the good news under the Constitution of the United States, his term ends, whether we have an election or we don't, January 20th, 2021 at noon to the 2nd. He and Mike Pence are gone. 4 years to the 2nd, gone, even if we don't have an election. He can't delay it, but what he's going to try and do with the post office and the stunt I told you he's going to try and do. But, let's go. Game on. I'm still madder than hell over 2000. We won the 2000 election.
Yes.
They worked harder than we did, and they stole the presidency from us. And guess what? We ended up going to Iraq and everything else, and it's a different country.
You also had a candidate that had no backbone. Al Gore didn't fight for it. He didn't fight for it, right? And so, there was that. You were absolutely right.
We sit down. I love him, lovely man, Warren Christopher. Remember, He was our guy in charge. He went down one day. Jim Baker on the other side went down and lived there for 2 months.
And it didn't hurt that the governor was also the brother of the man in Florida with the hanging chair. You know, come on.
Who was very close to, the Secretary of State, Harris.
Come on.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Karen, we know that. So fight hard.
All right. Last question before I let you go. Are you how do I don't know what I'm not confident. So I'm stumbling right now because I think Trump can win again with everything that you just said.
Yep.
I don't know what this country looks like if that happens.
Oh. Listen, I'm the most optimistic man in the world, I'll be honest with you, this country ceases to exist as we know it. I don't say that lightly. He is a racist. I dealt with him a lot, Karen. When he was elected in 2017, I was the chairman of the Governors Association. I was in charge of all the governors. So I represented the governors. I dealt with them in 2017 on ICE detainers, on immigration, on health care. I talked to him on the day of Charlottesville, when I had 1,000 neo-Nazis and white supremacists come into my state from 35 other states, spewing the most vile things against African Americans, against women, against members of the Jewish faith, yelling at me in front of the synagogue, we're going to burn you, and we're going to burn that synagogue like we did in Auschwitz. Really? And they're wearing swastikas and Adolf Hitler shirts. I mean, really? I talked to the president that day. I said, Mr. President, you have got to come out and condemn this violence. You have got to come out and condemn this hatred. I said, sir, you've got to stop the hate speech. It's ruining our country. You know what he said to me, Karen? He said, you're right. I will come out and say the right thing. I said, this is your moment, Mr. President. So I waited on my press conference. Karen, I waited 4 hours. He finally came out and said, as you know, he wouldn't use the word neo-Nazi and white supremacist, and he said there were good people on both sides. Heather Heyer was 32 years old, killed that day, fighting and protesting against hatred. The man has no moral core. So I'm telling you, we cannot, as Michelle Obama said it better than anybody, we cannot afford 4 more years of this man.